Good morning, everyone. Welcome to all of you here in the room. If you're here for the first time, there you have people in the room, and we have people online on GoToWebinar, Facebook, and YouTube. So we welcome all of you here this morning. This is the 26th, right? It says 126 on you. 26th of April, 2023. And it's another great class with author Guy Finley for today. So here's how the format goes. Guy will give about a 60-minute talk. We'll take a 5-minute break, and we'll come back for questions and answers, where you can ask Guy a question. If you're on GoToWebinar, you can ask it directly to Guy, and we will, behind the scenes, direct him to you. Or if you'd like to write a question on any of the formats online, you can do it in the chat box or the question box, and we can help you behind there. Also, if you have any technical problems online, we'll help you behind the scenes there. And also at support@guyfinley.com. If you ever need help there, we can help you with that. Support@guyfinley.com. So that's our welcome today. That's our beginning of our class, Denise. This is what we're going to do today. And we'll get started with the topic and the key lesson. Here's today's topic. Make this spiritual fact your friend and set yourself free. Here's the key lesson. Since it is impossible to be unhappy over what you don't have without first having been subjected to some form of unseen, painful comparison, this means the true source of one's unhappiness isn't because of some passing condition, but rather is a creation of an unconscious nature punishing itself each time it negatively reacts to some imagined happiness lost.
Good morning, and good morning to all of you out there in the land of the Ethernet. As always, I'm glad that you're here, and I'm glad that we have the time that we do to study and try to understand what it is exactly that we're here for. There's an old saying, I don't know from whence it came, but something along the lines of, what does a summer insect know about ice? What does a summer insect know about ice? Nothing. Avoid it at all costs. It's an old idea that just expresses this one impression. And the impression is that there are different natures and different worlds and different levels of being. And that certain natures belong in certain places and others yet in still different places. The biggest problem that an aspirant has is that they're trying to make what they hear in terms of spiritual principles into something that they can apply to the world they're in. You want to use spiritual ideas to make your life better. Spiritual ideas aren't to make your life better. They will, but not at first. Spiritual ideas are to introduce you eventually to the wish and then the will to work sufficiently to awaken, to discover that there is another entire world within you, literally another entire kingdom, one that is not subjected to the things that you are trying to use spiritual principles to save yourself from. Spiritual principles are not to save you. Spiritual principles are to help you see how futile it is to try and save yourself as you are. That it's an abject waste. And that's why summer insects don't know anything about ice. Meaning, simply put, I want my life to be better. I don't want to know that my life as it is actually, quite literally, incapable of becoming anything other than some strange, vacillating identity and condition where I am forever without knowing why, subjected to the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. Thank you, William Shakespeare. That's the challenge that we have. I want everything I know to, and everything that I can learn, I want it to all fit into my mind. And all that mind can do is pull everything that's high into its low estate. That's all it can do. That's all it knows how to do, is to make out of something that is at least potentially new, to make it into something recognized. We live without knowing it, to not just recognize our surroundings at all time, but to prove that the surroundings that we recognize are necessary and vital to our well-being, and unless our circumstances look exactly like we've imagined they're supposed to look like, then all hell is broken loose. We've been studying, if you've been joining me, if you haven't, I hope that you will, for the last several Wednesdays, this idea that behind every negative reaction there is a single source. There is no negative reaction without a single source. And I'll trust my esteemed students in the room here. Don't let me down. To say, what is that one thing behind all negative reactions, no matter who you are, where you are, or what day or time it is? What is the one thing? Oh, gee. There are no negative reactions without resistance. It is impossible to have a negative reaction that isn't preceded by something in you that has met the moment and decided that the moment is not the way it's supposed to be. And in the moment of that certainty and the conflict that is not the result of the condition, but of a consciousness that meets the condition, fully conditioned itself to expect nothing other than what it wants to see in order to confirm itself as it's imagined itself being. So we're going to look at this. I intend to show you something today. It's quite deep, and I hope that you will take the pains quite literally to stay as present as you can so that you can capture some of what is being shown to you. Because if you'll simply bring some of what is being shown to you into you, it will find a corresponding part that awaits within you that has been waiting to see what you are being shown, so that you can begin to act in a new way in those moments where resistance raises up its ugly head and you're often running, fighting with some negative reaction, believing as you do that the reason you're negative is because he said that, she did this, or the world went left or right. And we do all believe that our pain is because of an uncooperative world, uncooperative family, uncooperative friends, uncooperative health. So can there be any form of resistance? Can any form of resistance appear in us without, prior to us feeling that resistance, that stress, that negativity? Can there be any form of resistance unless prior to that moment, something, we know not yet what, had formed some kind of an attachment and a dependency upon something that it didn't even know it had done? And that in the moment when that condition shows itself, and I'm filled with this resistance, it's because in that level of consciousness, it feels threatened by what the moment has brought. But what we don't know is that the reason it feels threatened by what the moment has brought is because it is comparing what the moment has brought to what it expected it to bring. And when it didn't bring what it expected, then it is threatened because my identity is established and confirmed in all of these imagined states of myself, my ideals and my beliefs. So that anything that threatens that consciousness is seen as an existential threat to my identity. And it's not your identity until and unless, as it always happens, you identify with that resistance and the subsequent negative reactions. Still following me, everybody? Nice deep breath. Have you Have you noticed what your mind does all the time? Now, I'm afraid if I ask the question, you go, well, I don't know what he's talking about, then we've got quite a ways to go, and that's okay. What is my mind occupied with all the time? It is occupied all the time, isn't it? What is it occupied with all the time? I hear all these things raining down from inside the room. Not very confident comments, I might add. They're more like, my mind is unendingly involved in and trying to control something that it was captured by and felt threatened or otherwise a promise within. And so my mind just rolls and rolls and rolls along where, and this is why we have these meetings. My mind never stops trying to resolve its own reactions. It never stops trying to resolve its own reactions because in that mind, the way that it is, it believes that the condition it is reacting to is different than the reaction to it. It believes the condition it is reacting to is different than the condition, is different than the reaction to it. I'm going to try to show you something. You'll have to listen, and then we'll take great pains to try and bring it down to where we can at least get some inkling of the truth of it. What am I trying all the time, anxiously I might add? What is it that I'm actually trying to control? What is it? You may not know this. For instance, I mentioned this Saturday at the on the Insight Timer talk. You pull up next to a car. Now, most of us don't even know that we're in a car, which is really scary. You pull up, and there's somebody in the car next to you, and maybe they're bebopping, or they're on the phone, or they're just staring straight ahead, and their knuckles are on the steering wheel, white. What is that person doing? Where is that person? Where is that person? That person is in their mind. But the fact is, the mind that person is in is not their mind. It is a level of mind that by its nature never stops measuring and comparing anything and everything that it sees around it. So that person, without knowing it, maybe they're sitting there and they drove by a dental place and they have a toothache. Or they drove by the supermarket and they're thinking to themselves, gosh, food is so expensive. The point being that everything the mind lands on, the fact that it is drawn to it isn't by accident. Your mind isn't drawn to things by accident. Your mind is drawn to things that your mind will have an identity from when it lands there. It's always connected to something from the past, what our mind lands on. So there it is, and I have a reaction. And that's what it is doing sitting in the car. It is trying to resolve its own reactions by thinking about what to do with the stress or anxiety it feels. And it can't see that every solution it comes up with is always an incomplete solution. And so it creates a corresponding reaction to its own incomplete finding because it isn't satisfied. It knows that's not the whole story. So then that mind just goes on and on and on in a ceaseless loop, believing that somehow or other, main segue, take a nice deep breath, transition. Here I am. I'm anxious. What is it that I don't want? What is it that I don't want? Is it the condition that I don't want? Well, see, the problem is that you've got too much knowledge and not enough factuality. If you knew, for instance, that it wasn't the condition that's the problem, why would you spend time thinking about that person or what to do with that circumstance? You don't know what you think you know. You're not even close. And the proof is that every time a condition comes that you don't want, you are captured by the condition, and then you believe, due to the reaction to the condition, you must somehow or other change, control, or escape that moment. That's what I'm caught up in, yes or no? So I spend 4,000 years doing that. And then I start to think to myself, well, I'm not having that good of luck with changing people. Maybe I need to change myself. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to change myself. And then I spend another 4,000 years trying to change myself. Because I think now, well, it's not the condition. I've learned it's not the condition. So if it's not the condition, then it must be my negative reaction to it. That has to be the problem. And do we not vacillate? The condition, well, okay, I know it's not the condition, but I'm so negative. I'm really not pretty right now. I'm ugly. I'm filled with anger. And we go back and forth and back and forth, do we not? Each solution to the condition to bring an end to its suffering as futile as the solution to trying to bring an end to my own negative reactions. Aren't you trying to bring an end to the conditions or the negative reactions? Are you not? And do you not believe that the condition is separate from the negative reaction? Do you not? Else why would I try just to control the condition or change the reaction? You will begin to make real changes in your life and find another kingdom within yourself when you understand beyond the shadow of a doubt that the condition and the reaction are a singularity. They are one thing. There is something that appears in us at the drop of a hat when this negative reaction comes up. And it is a certain a certain sense of myself, yes or no, when you have a negative reaction? Very distinct sense of myself. Now the appearance of that incredibly distinct sense of myself tells me by its nature that I'm having this sense of self because of what you said. So I feel the anger or the anxiety because of what I saw on the news. And so that I that is and acting as if it is separate than the condition it judges, believes from its judgment that it has to do something to change the condition. Or it has to do something to change itself so that the condition doesn't come again. It's going to get above it. But the fact of the matter is that negative reaction and that sense of I are not separate. You think, do you not, that when you have a negative reaction, it is you who are being subjected to some situation that's producing that condition? Yes or no? The negative reaction is I. The negative reaction is I. How can we know that's true? By the way, when I was thinking about this talk before I get into that, my mind flashed on Dragnet. Now, most people don't know what Dragnet is. I do radio shows, and I was a fairly successful composer writing music back in the 70s and 80s. Most people that I wrote music for, nobody even knows who they are anymore. So when I say Dragnet, how many of you remember Dragnet? We're an older group. And what was his name? What was the, huh? Sergeant Friday. What was it that he always said when he was talking to people? Oh my God. We are old. That's what he'd say, because he'd ask a question and the person just go, yada, 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 saying all these things that weren't germane. And he'd say, ma'am, just the facts, ma'am. Just the facts, ma'am. Just the fact that there is no negative reaction, no resistance that doesn't come out of some circumstance in which a condition is met, but the condition that is met does not match the expectation of the condition that I came into that moment not even knowing that I had. When you get negative, how many of you can be made negative pretty much at the drop of a hat? How many of you are negative now? It's what a phenomena. And it is, you'll see it one day. You know why we're made negative so easily? Negativity essentially is born of resistance. Resistance is always a summary rejection of a certain revelation. What you get negative over is the fact that in that moment, who and what I am or believe myself to be cannot find a foothold. And so my negativity gives me a very distinct sense of myself by which, now I know who I am. I was worried, I was confused, I didn't understand, I don't know why this was happening, but all I have to do is just suddenly I'm full of resistance, I'm full of that negative reaction. And again, to the point, the I in a negative reaction is not separate from the negative reaction that gives rise to that I. They are one and the same. And we're going to prove that. That's why I say just the facts, ma'am. Because what if I actually understood? Here I am, and I'm filled with resistance about something. I get some news. People are doing this. I don't like what's happening. I have a summary negative reaction, always mechanical, quite strong. And what is the first thing that happens to me? I look and I say, this is wrong. This shouldn't be like that. Yes or no? This is not the way it's supposed to be. And the moment that I've arrived at the conclusion it's not supposed to be, yes or no? Do you not, maybe you don't hear the voice. Some of you hear it because I hear you say it. Something goes wrong. Yeah, this is not how it's supposed to be. Yes or no? Whether you say it or not, there is a voice, a feeling passes through the psychic system. This is not how it's supposed to be. End of story, right? How can a moment that never happened be not the way it's supposed to happen? How can a moment that never happened before be something that isn't supposed to happen? Room is awfully quiet because it's evident. The only reason for the resistance and the negative reaction to the moment is because I came into the moment already filled with some form of identification with whatever the creature or condition or character was, and when the moment unfolds and it meets that insistence, that demand, and that demand isn't met by the circumstance, what else do I have to do but get negative? And why, by the way? Why do I get negative in those moments? Does negativity help? Why do I get negative? What has negativity ever done for anybody? Anybody? Nothing. Nothing. It's done nothing. And yet that's the first thing. Why? Because the negativity is a reestablishing of our identity. The negativity, the negative reaction, is a reestablishment of an identity that was threatened by a condition that did not compare to how it was imagined it should be. This is our problem. Why aren't you stunned with the rapidity of some anxiousness, some fear, some worry? Why aren't I not stunned how I can instantaneously be picked up and punished by my own negative reactions, and then believe over and over again that if I can just change the condition, I'll get rid of the conflict I'm in? When I've changed conditions 10,000 times and never changed once the fact that just like that, I'm negative. You're driving along. Now, ladies, I don't know if you're like this. Men, I know that you're driving in your car. You fill in the example. And like for me, I'm driving in my car, and I'm always looking at the traffic ahead. And I'm trying to, now listen, please try to understand. I'm saying I'm trying. Something in me is sitting there like some kind of computer, and it's going, well, look, that's kind of opening up over there. No, maybe there's a truck there. I don't like diesel anyway. I'm not going to get it. And it's involved in this massive exploration and explanation of how it can gain 2 car lengths in the next 2 stoplights. And it has no idea that it's doing that. And it has no idea that when it, for instance, suddenly a lane opens up and a voice says, God, look at that. Oh, I got a free, I can go that way. Look. There's no awareness of that identity with the lane that's opened up. And why am I identified with a lane that's opened up even though I'm in the middle of traffic? Why is that? Anybody? Because I'm already identified with getting someplace faster, so this is going to get me there faster. And then what happens when suddenly somebody pulls in front of the lane that you thought was going to be open all the way to the kingdom of heaven? What happens? Instantaneous negativity. And the mind never examines itself. It never notices that literally everything that is going on and in and through it is part of an endless measurement of something that it is taking and making, comparing conditions to what it wants or hopes for. And when the conditions work out the way it's compared it to, then it's content. And the minute the conditions meet something that isn't comparative to what it wants, what happens to it? Instantaneously negative. Yes or no? Can that resistance, can that reaction exist without comparison? Please, this is important. Don't think to yourself this is some kind of intellectual fodder or whatever the word is. Can I have resistance and a negative reaction to anything without comparison? It's impossible for me to have resistance to what you've said unless something in me is comparing it to how you should treat me. So that the root of all negative reactions that come from this ceaseless resistance to anything that doesn't compare favorably to what? That doesn't compare favorably to what? My past. This body of conditioned thoughts and feelings, this host of memories that are all twisted up together, so that consciousness is always, you know the expression of Christ, I go before you to make the crooked place. That consciousness is always trying to figure out how to get someplace where things won't be crooked, so that it can have the sense of itself as someone or something that excels or that is superior to it, to its own constant dissatisfaction. No resistance without comparison. No comparison without the past. Now this is where it gets difficult for us to understand. Do you think you walk around with literally a household of filing cabinets or digital content, I don't know what the hell it would be, that never stops measuring everything that comes to you? Do you think that about yourself? We don't. And everything that doesn't measure up produces a reaction. Everything that doesn't measure according to what my past requires it to be like is seen as a threat to my being. Everything, from the least to the greatest. So that I live without knowing it, and this should explain to you why you're such a mess, this anxiousness, this stress. I live with something that never stops looking for something to resist, because it's always measuring everything that it meets according to something that it's going to compare what it meets to. And when it doesn't measure up to what it meant to compare to, now listen, I think I'm in conflict with the condition. Am I in conflict with the condition, or is my consciousness conflicted because it's always finding something in a condition that doesn't match what it's compared to be? Do you see it? This is why we're so. Do you ever wonder why you have such a quick temper? So quickly thrown off the rails? Because there's something inside of us that lives in an almost ceaseless kind of turmoil. And all we know to do when that turmoil reaches this pitch point is to look at the condition and blame the condition for our reaction to it. And I'm going to say it again, the I and the reaction are not separate from the condition that it blames for the state that comes up. Let me show it to you yet. The reaction is what? What's the reaction? The reaction is to, I say it's the condition, but it's not even my reaction. It's not even my reaction. I'm identified. I've spent all my life trying to protect. For instance, how many of you are very sensitive to what would be something quite common? Especially in today's world, you have to respect me. If you even talk down to me a little bit, yes or no? Yes. Now, do you think that you walk around ready to unload on somebody that doesn't talk to you in tones that are pleasing? Do you? But do you unload if someone talks to you in tones that are unpleasing? So that means that this consciousness wound up, brings with it, takes with it, is consumed by its own content to such an extent that it is there at all points in times like some strange creature looking out and comparing this condition to what? To how it's supposed to be so that I can be who I've imagined myself as being. And anything that doesn't support my imagined sense of self is ostensibly a threat. And that's why I have the resistance and the negative reaction to them, because they have become an instant threat. Do you remember some time ago I used a term, I made it up, it was called the memory. It's so difficult for us to believe, let alone see. How do I get to this? All right. Would you agree that you are immersed in a consciousness that has stored up an endless amount of impressions and memories, and that you don't know that you have had this memory, and that memory is I, isn't it? So that when anything challenges a memory, and a memory, by the way, that was made by a consciousness that made sure that what was being remembered had nothing to do with any fault of its own, so that each time some memory that I walk around with, this bundle of memories, anytime an event challenges the memory, it's challenging I. But am I my memories? That's the question. Am I my memories? I am not my memories. And yet, to the point, each and every memory has its own I. You've heard the expression Christ talked about, legion. Every unconscious impression that became the seed of a memory has its own I. A certain sense of oneself that was formulated at the moment of that reaction and that resistance, and that as it took its shape, it became an object, a creature in this consciousness, and that we walk around with these creatures in our consciousness, memories, a memory, an I that cannot be separated from the memory that produced it and that it then lives in and from. And they're not separate. But we think they're separate. They're not separate. Try to see this. Can you think of something that sets you off, like we do on a Wednesday night? What sets you off? Anybody? Come on. What sets you off?
Not being recognized.
If somebody doesn't recognize how great I am. Why does that set me off? Because somewhere along the line, whatever it was, I could have been 6 years old. There was some kind of an experience, and this consciousness had no idea what to do with the pain in it, the problem, and so it stored it away, it stashed it. Incomplete experience, stashed it as a memory, but that memory had an I in it, didn't it? Now, I can't remember that I can't remember anything about that I, and yet, boom, there it is, and that sense of self is just there, just like that. Exactly the same it was when it was first formulated. Aren't you stunned at the rapidity with which this certain sense of yourself can jump up? And it's so familiar. Of course it's familiar, because I've had it 10,000 times. And 10,000 times my solution to that memory is to do what? To try to change the condition that triggered that sense of self. And you can't separate yourself from the condition that triggers that sense of self. The sense of self doesn't exist apart from the condition that's triggered. Are you able to see this with me somewhat? Let's take something as a real example. How many of you, know someone, family member, somebody at work, in this school? Just somebody has just to mention their name. What happens to you? The split second that someone or something reminds you of someone that you don't like, do you have to think to yourself why you don't like them? Do you? No. And yet that never amazes you. That they're showing you a picture, a family album, and there's one person off to the far right, and it's weird Aunt George. And instantaneously, I know everything about that person and why they're an idiot. How is that possible? Unless the advent of seeing that picture or hearing that person's name brings up inside of you a fully formed memory and its accompanying I. And that I doesn't believe that it has anything to do with the condition or the person blamed. And the reason it doesn't believe the reason it believes it's disconnected from the person or the condition is because it judges it endlessly. That's how it hides. The sense of self that cannot be separated from the reaction hides the fact that it is one with the reaction by judging that which it's reacting to. That's what it does. That means I'm different than the person I'm judging. That means I'm different than my own negative reaction. This is what I'm working to solve with you here. Because as long as you believe that you are other than your own negative reaction, you will continue to be conditioned by your own reactions and further establishing the identity that's derived from it. So that you believe I just have to get further away, do something else with this person or this problem. Each negative reaction creates, in proportion to its intensity, the experience of a painful sense of self that we don't want, yes or no? And then we struggle, do we not, with that particular I, that particular circumstance, believing that the struggle proves that I am other than this reaction. Well, why would you struggle with a reaction? Why would you struggle with a reaction? For one thing, it's all I know to do. But I struggle with it because I don't like the experience of it. I struggle with my negative reactions. I don't like the experience of it. As if somehow or other the experience of the negative reaction actually belongs to the me that is being punished by this condition. You're not being punished by a condition. You are in a mind that punishes itself because it believes each I is separate from the condition it judges. You just don't see it. Now, back to the dragnet. Just the facts, ma'am. Remember I started this talk by saying the summer insect doesn't know anything about ice? The only sense of self I know is the me that wants or doesn't want. That's all I know. The only sense of self I know. I'm for it or against it. I have to fix it or free myself. That's all I know. And yet I'm trying to show you that there is a completely different relationship that you can have with these moments where resistance brings up these negative reactions. So let's just slow down. If, I hope I was able to show you, this negative reaction, that by the fact that I can't stand it, proves to the me that's having it that I am separate from this reaction. If that I that resists its own experience cannot be separated from the experience it's having, then what on earth am I going to do when I start having another negative reaction? Do you understand the question? 2 words, hyphenated. Hands off. Hands off. The pain of resisting any and every moment that fails to meet a requirement I had placed upon it before the condition can never be resolved by trying to change the condition. And that something altogether new has to happen. The resistance doesn't exist without the memory. The memory is an I. The I and the memory have a position. They are a basis of undetected, ceaseless identification that when challenged turn into some form of fear or resistance to what challenges it. To recognize the truth of that is to understand the last thing that I should do in any moment where I'm filled with this resistance, this negative reaction. The last thing that I should do is get involved in it. And just to close this talk, isn't it extraordinary? I'm terrified not to act from a negative reaction. I'm literally terrified not to do what my negative reaction tells me to do. What am I going to do? What am I going to do if I don't follow that reaction to the conclusion that it has come to? What will happen to me? Do you understand the question? And this is what I'm trying to say. What will happen to me? Who? What will happen to I? The I isn't you. That I is not you. But all I know to do is to identify with it. If the I that says you must do to resolve the condition or to change yourself, if the I can't be separated from the condition, what am I actually doing every time I let that I get involved in trying to change the condition? What am I actually doing in that moment? I'm further conditioning myself, aren't I? Reincarnation, literally. Literally. Crystallization, literally. And I don't want to come undone. Remember I said, insect ice, know nothing about winter? I don't want to come undone. I don't want to. That should be a new doctor story. You have I don't want to syndrome. gosh, I fail at this. What is it that I don't want to come undone? Please, my past. But what is it that I'm always trying to escape? My past. I, in quotes, am forever trying to protect whatever the memories are and their eyes that are there. I'm always trying to keep everything in place, am I not? And yet, what is every pain that I have in life other than something has challenged the very thing that I'm trying to protect? Do you see it at all? So now back to Dragnet and to close the talk. Just the facts. Why just the facts? Facts don't need words, do they? If I see something, do I need words for it? Just the facts. If you were in business or whatever you were doing, and you knew that somebody was always speaking for you and never getting it right and doing nothing but causing problems, how long would you let someone else speak for you? Would you do it? Well, why do you let someone speak for you in these moments? Just the facts. The fact is, I'm negative because the condition has challenged something that I brought forward, into a memory of something I'm identified with, and I can't change the condition. The I, see, this is, do we not think that the I, my sense of self in the moment of reaction, that I is other than the reaction? Yes, that's the point. It isn't separate from the reaction. That's why that I can never bring an end to what you're reacting to. It isn't separate from the reaction. If I see that I isn't separate from the reaction, but it's an illusion, which it is, then it starts to explain why for all the things that I've changed, very little has actually changed. Because it's in a dream world. It's in a level of consciousness that can't see itself, that doesn't understand itself, and that hides from itself that it doesn't understand itself by all of the negative reactions that confirm with great passion, I know what's going on. So here I am. You say something, they do something, this goes down, I don't like it. I'm suddenly filled with resistance. I have this negative reaction. If I've understood anything at all about what's been said, what's the exercise? Hands off. If you've understood any of this, you will see that you can't be hands off. You understand now the necessity of it, because why would I further condition myself to believe somehow or other that these circumstances have the power to crush me? No, hands off. And you just remember that. You just remember that there is no negative reaction that is separate from the I that is reacting. They are a singularity. And if I see them or even suspect it as such, I can't say I to the negative reaction. I can't say I to it. And if I can't say I to it, then the negative reaction can't tell me what to do to get rid of the experience I don't want. Then I must simply remain there as best I'm capable of remaining there, observing all of the upheaval of this body of memory suddenly threatened and trying to do everything they can to keep something in place that has no right to remain in place in me. What do you think violence, hatred, crime, all of the criminality, what do you think all of that's about in this world? The religious, the political, the affiliations, all the things connected with body politic, all of that past trying to keep itself in place and hiding the fact that it can't do it within the legion of morality codes and laws that they make. also that somehow or other the past can stay in place. Hands off. Do the best you can. You even try that, you will see something that you have never seen before. And then you'll have your hands on a truth. You'll have your hands on a fact. The fact will free you if you're willing to see it. Let's take a break, come back and have our dialogue.
because the Life of Learning Foundation is a nonprofit organization, and our mission of sharing these ideas around the world couldn't be accomplished without the help of many, the people in this room and all of you online. And we have a special opportunity coming up to make an effort to help the work. And I just wanted to draw your attention to it. Tuesday, November 28th, is called Giving Tuesday. And on Giving Tuesday, Facebook, a major social media platform, has for the last several years sponsored a program where any donation made to a nonprofit organization through their Facebook page on that day, Facebook says those donations will be eligible to be matched by Facebook on that day. And it is a special effort by Facebook to try to encourage donations through its platforms to nonprofits in order to help those nonprofits with their missions. And this Tuesday, it is coming up. And so we invite you, if you are so inclined, if you are on social media, if you have a Facebook account, you can go to our Facebook page on Tuesday, November 28th, and you'll see a fundraiser there set up by the foundation. And if you make a donation on November 28th, that donation is eligible to be matched by Facebook. And we would greatly appreciate your consideration for doing that. If you need a quick and easy way to get to our Facebook page, you can use the link guyfinley.org/Facebook, and that will take you right to the page. And on the 28th, you will see the fundraiser there, and you can make a donation of any size, and that donation, as always, is tax deductible in the United States. If you don't have a Facebook account and you're unable to do that still, again, we greatly appreciate your help. And at the end of the video, you saw a link. You can go to guyfinley.org/donation, and that will take you to a PayPal page where, again, any donation that you make is appreciated and goes to furthering this work, and we thank you for your support. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Doug and onto our Q&A.
All right, Guy, do you have any words before we start?
No.
Okay. Now is the time, everybody. We have a couple of written questions. We have one in the queue. Now's the time to raise your hand if you're on GoToWebinar, and you can join Guy with a question, a comment, or an impression. You can do that, as well as write in behind the scenes a question if you wish. Well, let's go ahead and get started. We have Namita in the queue.
Hello, Guy.
Hi, Namita.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So, till now, you have been talking about, when the active meets the passive, that you dive in. And now this talk, you said hands off. So I just want a clarification, like if hands off is another level, and when you have your hands off, where should that tension be? Or when you're diving in, where the tension should be?
Well, you were kind of breaking up in my ear a little bit, but I think you alluded to this idea that that I'm supposed to dive in or hands off, and which is it? Was that basically what she was asking?
Where your attention should be.
Yeah. What, Namita?
Yeah, okay. I'll just say it once again. So before, in the talks before this, you had said that when the active meets the passive, you dive in, like you had given an analogy of diving into the whale. And in today's talk, you said you keep your hands off.
Okay, I understand that.
Um,
I got it, Namita. I understand what you're asking. They're exactly the same thing, Namita. Exactly the same thing. This idea that when what is active meets what is passive, when active meets what is passive, there is something new that is created, and there is a new awareness of that creation in that moment. We dive into that awareness. We give ourselves to that awareness, the awareness of the opposites, not attending to this opposite or that opposite, but attending to what is born out of their marriage. The hands off means that I don't attend simply to the reaction or the self that's reacting. I don't attend just to what is active or what is passive. I attend to the unification, the reconciliation of these forces, out of which there is an awareness that allows for these things, Namita, allows for active and passive, allows for there to be rebirth, allows creation. But it's all unfolding within another order of awareness, another kind of attention, Namita. That's the answer to that. You look, maybe I'm wrong, but I suspect I'm not. And I know how frustrating it is when I say to you, you're trying to do this with your mind. You can't do this with your mind. The whole of this work is to show you you can't do this with your mind. Your mind's great for making pasta, fazooli. Your mind's great for knowing how to get from here to Detroit. But from here to the divine is not a mind thing. Here to the divine is what no mind is. Because the attempt to use your mind to realize something divine means that you are trying to realize something that you think is divine and how to get there or to avoid the conditions keeping you from it. That mind is useless. See, the world we're in, there's no education in this world. None. I can tell you, you don't know how rare the education is that you get here. And that has nothing to do with the speaker. I spent 50 years looking for education and couldn't find it. Education of the soul requires the soul's eventual realization that it is not going to educate itself, no matter how driven it is to do so. It's education by relationship. And relationship is realization, and realization ultimately is integration. And that's why the mind can't do this. The mind trying to integrate itself separates itself from the parts it's trying to integrate. It cannot do it. And it's not fun. All I have to do is look at you and I know how much fun it's not. It's not fun because I want to have progress. And I don't want to meet what is unknown. And I don't want to deal with things that I feel like if I don't deal with them, I'm going to go to hell in a handbasket. I don't want any of that. And if you want a relationship with God, you have to have all of that and 10 times that. So on we go, Doug.
All right, we have a question from Mary, Guy, and she says, hello, Guy.
Hi,
After
Mary.
an unwanted event or behavior from someone else, a negative reaction occurs. Being aware of my reaction, I can see it and just watch and attempt to not engage with the thoughts of the reaction. However, even when I don't engage with those thoughts, there is still an intense unease, feelings of discomfort that make it difficult to fully and mindfully focus on the next action in hand, whatever that may be. What do we do then to become fully present of the moment when the event that took place cannot be left unresolved practically?
I like your question, Mary. And I don't know how you'll like this answer. Part of the innate conditioning of this consciousness is a bifold, dichotomous belief. I believe that I'm not supposed to meet any limitations that I can't immediately figure out how to get by through an act of will. And the other side of that is that when I meet some limitation and I can't get through it, then I'm to avoid that circumstance at all costs. I'm not saying that you should be a Christian. I'm not saying you should be any religion. But you got to think to yourself, if Christ says, of myself I can do nothing, what do you think that means about you? Woman, why do you call me good? There's no one that's good. How does that fit into today's world? Of myself I can do nothing means that I have the capacity to see that of myself I can't save myself. I have that right, but it's to gag on for most of us. Because who's going to save me if I don't? And then you say, well, I believe in God. No, you don't. You believe in a God made in your own image. And then you don't understand why your God hasn't saved you. The God hasn't saved you because you as a human being are trying to live up to and are consequently punished by the God that you've made. Who do you think judges you? Your God. The memory of a God. How's that? Maybe that'll be my next book title, another flop. The memory of God. Subtitle, or why I'm punished ruthlessly by myself. So Mary, your question is rife with certain intimations that are exciting. Because what you're saying is, I pretty much understand what you've been saying, and I'm kind of on board with it, but then, this thing happens, and I don't know what the next thing to do is, because I can't be present fully here because I'm caught up between worlds. So what does that tell me? I don't have my own attention. My attention is placed where my reaction places it, isn't it? My attention is placed where my reaction places it. So if I actually see in this instance that reaction and the I, that they are a singularity, and that the reaction belongs to a body of memori, belongs to a conditioned nature, then I'm going to have to start struggling with its preferences, aren't I? Aren't I? I'm going to have to meet the limitation of my present level of attention. You're created to do it. You're created to do it. The question is, how willing are you to enter into that void where you're not leading yourself, but following a certain love that you have for what's true, that you know you need to have in your life? So Mary, that's the answer. Try to see it with greater clarity. However, even when I don't engage with those thoughts, there's still an intense unease and feeling of discomfort that make it difficult to fully and mindfully focus on the next action. I'm divided, she's saying. Isn't she? Now, the only way I can be divided is if I haven't seen holy. You can't be divided and see holy. Just the facts, ma'am. If I see the facts, I can't be divided. But I'm beginning to meet the fact that something inside of me is terribly divided, and actually, and again, I don't know how if I see the fact, I have to deal with the fact. Doesn't mean I like the fact, I just have to deal with it. On we go, Doug.
Next in the queue, Guy, is Fiona.
Fiona.
Fiona, you want to unmute yourself? I know you know how to do it. There you go.
Hello, Guy.
I wish I could see you.
I know. Great to see you and hear your talk as usual. And there's a lot of talk on sense of self, and really seeing the depths of sense of self is in every single thing that you say, because in the earlier question about, the active and the passive, basically the sense of self isn't just who I think I am, my job, my place in society, and what I have, what I don't have. It's way beyond that. It's basically anything where I'm reacting, anything that hits this self, where it has an opinion, where it has a thought or a negative reaction. Basically, that's all of the passive.
Yes.
It's the sense of self.
Yes.
That's all the sense of self.
Yes.
So it's way deeper. It's just great to really get more and more depth.
Fiona, it is, it seems too big, but, and this is why a certain order of true knowledge is essential. Everything that is created is passive. Anything that's been created is passive. And everything that is created that is passive exists to have something act upon it. So that you can't separate the active and the passive, because the passive is completed by the activity, and the activity completes what is passive. It brings into a new creation. That's what it does. Everything that is passive remains incomplete because it doesn't exist outside of what it requires to complete it. Do you understand? It requires it. So if something is complete, meaning it has been brought into time, by its nature, by its passive state, it requires that something act on it. That's this consciousness. You can see it with a blade of grass. I often talk about it. Blade of grass constantly growing, but it can't constantly grow unless something's acting on what is passive. It requires the circulation, a divine circulation, to bring out of the blade of grass its full possibilities. We require a divine circulation to bring out of what is passive a new order of creature. So there's no moment where it's done. It's just this constant reconciliation between what is divine and what is not in time, what is timeless and what is not. So see, again, this is it. I believe that I am absolutely the most unique creature that ever lived. Don't you? And I have trouble with your belief, because I am the most unique creature. You can be a little unique if you want, as long as you recognize my massive uniqueness first and foremost. That's what I believe. And everybody believes that. Because everybody isn't anybody the way we think of it. Everybody is this level of consciousness that belongs to a certain organization at the level of this planet and our consciousness, so that we live from a consciousness that is our consciousness. And our consciousness is incomplete. It's incomplete because it's created to be completed, and for us to have the experience of not being the active or the passive, but what is born out of the relationship between them. Because that's done, and then what is done becomes the passive, and then what is passive requires something to act upon it again, and that's forever. So there you go, Fiona. Oh, Kate says we're working on allowing people to come on video if they wish. That's so exciting. Most won't, but it'd be nice to be able to do that. Good. Doug, what's up?
All right. Here I am on video. Here's a question from Frida. Hello, Guy. You say if you try to stay away from the negative reaction, then you find out you can't. I can see that I can't do that, but how does that ever stop?
Hello, Guy. You say if you try to stay away from the negative reaction, then you find out you can't. I can see that and I can't do that, but how does that ever stop? Greetings, Frida. I'm not saying to stay away from the negative reaction. Again, this is, Frida, everybody, this is our mind. It is a binary mind. I'm for or I'm against. I'm for anything that matches who and what I think I am or that will benefit me, and I'm against anything that I see as a threat or that seems to point to some limitation. I'm not saying to stay away from the negative reaction. I'm saying be a student of the negative reaction. How am I a student of the negative reaction? By being aware of the negative reaction. That's what your work is. Your work is not to arrive at a conclusion, a decision, or an action. Your work is to enter into, to use your attention, to enter into this awareness that appears as everything is being created, and to use that awareness as a platform, if you want, from which, as you see the facts, actions follow. As you see the facts, actions follow. But when you see the facts, it's not your actions. They're inherent in the awareness, the intelligence of the awareness, not your intelligence. One day, I swear to God, if you work, you will laugh at the idea that you were intelligent. With God as my witness, you will have the biggest laugh thinking that you were intelligent. A sleeping human being has no intelligence. Yes, they can figure out how to build a company and make $1 million and do all the things that make them popular and powerful in this world. But if they had any intelligence, they wouldn't do that. Intelligence isn't in words. Intelligence can't be known prior to the moment of its appearance. Intelligence has no past, but it can use the past as needed. Intelligence isn't a structure. It isn't connected to a past or a future. Intelligence is the perfect revelation of all that is required in the moment to perfect it as it is given. And it does that without a single word, a single thought. And it does it without an action unless the action is built into that revelation. Then that's intelligence. Over to you, Doug.
Right, here's our last written question from Carl. Guy, as you say, there's no joy in a comparative life. When I see a limitation in this consciousness, I judge myself for not being what I imagined I should be. I whip myself, calling myself a dumb spiritual seeker, etc. I can see this as this consciousness producing this judgment, but how can I complete this moment without judging myself?
I think you're asking the wrong question, Carl. Let's see, I've been judging myself since before they built the first pyramid. And I haven't escaped the pain of judging myself. What should I do? Now you're looking at me like that's a trick question, which really scares me. Is it a trick question? It's useless. It's useless. Now, intelligence knows without thinking not to keep doing what is useless and hope that it turns out to be useful. That's what intelligence knows. It doesn't think about it. Stop doing what's useless. Stop it. Just stop it. Look, you all have your druthers. Ellen, what are druthers?
They're things that you'd rather happen.
Druthers are, I have a choice, and this is what I would rather take place. So druthers don't exist without the idea of choice. You believe your choices are between good and evil. Don't you? You can't make a choice between good and evil without evil and good being there guiding your choice. It's impossible. The fall of man, the fall of humankind in the Garden of Eden. Do you really think that was about some apple and no, it's the story of a certain descent into materiality, into a level of consciousness that does not know who it is unless it knows what it is not. That's what it is. The opposites, the falling of our consciousness into a divided state that has to have good or evil so that it can know itself as the doer of good and the one who avoids the evil, or the one who hates themselves for the evil they do because it's not good. And neither of those exist without a consciousness that has identified and named and defined those states. Carl, stop. Make an aim. Make it as best you can make it. Every time I feel resistance to some revelation about myself, I'm going to understand that there cannot be that resistance without some idea I have about myself that I shouldn't be like that. Isn't that what you're filled with? I shouldn't be like that? Who shouldn't be like that? Who shouldn't be like that? The me that is better than that. If there's a me that's better than that, then why aren't I busy being that me? That's because no such me exists. Work. Anything else, Doug?
We did have one more question come in from Janice,
Okay.
and then we're right at the top of the hour, so we'll make this our last question.
Okay. And then
And she asked,
if there's
I've been
anybody that
thinking
wants
this
to-
thought. Did you want me to stop?
I was just saying that after we stop taking questions live, we can still have speakers here if there's anybody that wants to come up,
Right.
and everybody's welcome to stay. Okay,
Right.
go ahead, Doug.
Last from online. Janice asks, I've been thinking this thought. It is not good that man should be alone, in quotes. Does being in a partnership allow for growth for both partners, for both parties, by each acting on the other to facilitate growth in each?
Oh, yeah. But you have to understand something, Janice. in a relationship, any relationship, the roles by certain invisible influences, the roles are ceaselessly alternating. So that in one moment, I'm the gem and you're the polishing wheel. And the next moment, I'm the polishing wheel and you're the gem. And to understand the importance of that relationship is to produce a relationship in which everything that can be uncovered and, if you will, brought out and polished, perfected. The purpose of that relationship is for the perfection of the souls involved in it. We think we're the gem, and the problem is that people think they're a polishing wheel, yes or no. Yeah, that's my answer. Okay, Doug, over to you or whatever.
You, Guy, for in the room.
Okay, does anybody, come on, Denise. Anywhere you want.
Okay, my name is Denise, and without learning what you mean by hands off, I was thinking about becoming a crotchety old woman, or what it means to be a crotchety old man, because it seems like that's what naturally happens after you live long enough, because there's so dang much of the past to compare to.
That's exactly right.
So there's all this experience of a world that is deteriorating, that you can compare to the way it was in 1952 or whatever. Or all these people that you've met that never seem to change because they're still irritating. And
No, let that sink in, okay, because that was very profound.
so
They haven't changed because they're still irritating. I love that.
So at the risk of being maybe more negative than I really want to be,
No.
I can sort of understand how people fall into dementia, because you just can't face that anymore, or you want to deny it. I don't know. But I don't want that for myself.
And I don't want it for you.
No.
The consciousness that denies itself corrupts itself. The consciousness that denies itself corrupts itself. The consciousness that accepts responsibility for itself never stops changing into something new and greater than itself, because it's built into that consciousness to do so. So the crotchety old man, the crotchety old woman, the dementia, and all the other things that happen to us, it's all because there's this, it's exactly like this. It's like owning an immense farm, and you've got silo after silo after silo of grain and nobody to thresh it. So it rots in the silos. That's exactly what the human state is like. All of this grist for the mill is rotting because nobody understands its purpose or how to use it. And just the opposite of what you said is true. The more that's in the silo, the more can be separated and the more can be perfected.
Instead of forgotten.
Instead of hidden.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Wayne. Yesterday, I was involved with a pickleball outing called Turkey Trot, or Turkey Shoot, and no turkeys were killed. But anyway, it really gave me, this talk really made me aware of all the stuff that goes on in my mind, because at this pickleball club meeting, it was that you are able to play with all the different levels that there are. the 3-0 to the 5, the poor, the beginner to the really good one. And I noticed that how this nature wants to judge each person that he gets to play with. And it will go like, oh, I don't want to play with her. She's horrible. Or I get to play with him. I just screwed up. I knocked the ball all over the place. Just see all these eyes that come up, superiority to inferiority, to judging myself constantly, and just actually seeing how this nature, this mental apparatus is functioning. And it just makes me so glad that I'm a part of this school, to see something, because I've been wanting to work and see, because what I grew up with this nature wants to drag it forward. And in this comparison, it's always comparing to this image I have of myself, of how a great player is, or I'm not so, I have to play with so many, but it was such a good experience for me. And then having people talk about it this morning, of seeing these eyes, and it really stimulated me to see more. I want to see more of this and stay right in the middle of it. This school is fabulous. Thank you.
No reaction without resistance. No resistance without comparison. No comparison without the past. Which means every reaction is an echo of the past. Every reaction is an echo of the past. If the reaction is an echo of the past, and I try to deal with the reaction believing that it can change the past, then I am myself an echo, am I not, who cannot see that I do not for myself what I imagine I do. Goodbye.